Hey everyone, it's David Chen, and I'm here today with Melissa Tamminga from Seattle Screen Scene. We're here to talk about The Rhythm Section, which is Reed Morano's new movie starring Blake Lively as a would-be assassin who tries to seek revenge on the parties that killed her family in a plane crash. So, Melissa, overall thoughts on The Rhythm Section? Did you like the movie? What'd you think?
I would not necessarily say I liked the movie, but there are elements that I did really enjoy, namely Blake Lively's performance.
She's great.
And also just some of the filmmaking elements. There are some really interesting sequences that we can perhaps talk about later on.
So it sounds awesome. What's wrong with it?
The major problem, I would say, is the story, essentially. It's an utterly ridiculous story, and that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing if it really leaned into the ridiculousness of it, I think, and had a little bit of wit and levity about it. That would be kind of fine. But ultimately, I think it's a film that is really trying to take itself quite seriously.
Yeah.
And it's a very kind of dour approach to the story.
Yeah, and the problem is it doesn't have a tight enough story, a well-told enough story, a comprehensible enough story to like back that up.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I would say this is the sort of movie that is the equivalent to a kind of Pulp Fiction airport novel that you might pick up to read.
Yeah.
Because
on your way to a business trip or something.
Exactly. Like you can't read anything serious on your flight. You need to just read something you can literally throw away when you're done.
Wasteful. Donate that to a library.
Donate it. You can donate it. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, but I agree. It has that level of slightness to it. It's
Exactly.
not a super weighty story, although it tries to be in terms of its tone and in terms of the performance. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a certain element of the tone that was aiming for a seriousness that just isn't there in the story.
Yeah.
But the filmmaking perhaps could have tried to put some wit into it, but I didn't really feel like there was a lot of wit, and it was when it aims for being so serious and dark, and this is a character who's in a really dark place, and there's no levity at all. It's hard to have fun with such a ridiculous plot.
I agree. There's almost like no jokes during the course of the whole film.
Yes.
It's a very bleak tone, which is hard to maintain when you have a plot that's this silly.
Yes.
So that is a little bit unfortunate. One of the things I appreciated about this movie, though, is that Blake Lively plays this would-be assassin character, but she's actually really terrible at her job. She has like maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 gigs during the course of the movie, and she messes up almost every single one of them.
Everyone.
In a pretty not even just a little, not like, oh, I forgot my wristwatch there. Like she like catastrophically ruins it. And I found that to be like pretty amusing and an interesting kind of take on, because we've seen things like this. Like, in fact, I just watched a movie earlier this week called Anna that was very much like, hey, we're going to take someone from off the streets and make them into an assassin. And she's like like John Wick level assassin, right? Luc Besson's also done movies like La Femme Nikita or things like that, where like you see, a woman being trained up and just be like even better than the men are at doing this, right? And that's what I thought this movie was going to be.
Right.
I thought it was going to be like that, and then nope, not at all. She's just not that good. No. But I appreciated that because it felt more realistic to me. You know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, I do like that, and I almost wish it would have leaned into that a little bit more. And I think that I was sort of feeling, again, this tension of, does the film know that she's really bad at this, or or are we just seeing this and feeling uncomfortable? And then there's the Jude Law character too, who is supposed to be sort of ex MI6, and so he's supposed to be hyper competent, and yet for some reason he sends her out on the job when she's clearly not ready for it. So again, it's this thing of, are we supposed to think that he really does think that she's ready for it?
Right.
Or is he like, well, I can't stop her anyway, so I'm just going to let her go, and she might kill herself, but I guess I'm okay with that.
Yeah. A lot of questions about, like, why Jude Law isn't doing this himself.
Yes, exactly.
He's the one training her, so it's like, why isn't he just doing the things that he wants to do?
Exactly.
Because, usually when there's somebody training someone, it's like usually someone really old, like somebody who can't
there's no way he could go out and do it himself.
Yeah, exactly.
But clearly he's highly competent and he has nothing else going on.
He's nothing else to do.
Right.
Before we get to spoilers, what do you think, is this a movie you'd recommend people to see?
I wouldn't necessarily recommend paying money for this movie necessarily, but if it comes on HBO at some point, I mean, it could probably be a fun movie to watch with a group of people.
Yeah.
Just as you're sort of just what,
If you're like making a sandwich or something and you saw this coming on in the background, like there'd be worse ways to spend your time than watching the rhythm section.
Yeah. And there are enough interesting elements, I think, in the filmmaking to say, okay, there's definitely some skill involved in this. It's not really cohesive in a way that really serves the story, but there's some things to admire about it.
There's a couple of innovatively shot sequences that I appreciated.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
All right, let's get into spoilers starting right now for the rhythm section. So if you don't want to know spoilers for the rhythm section, tune out. But we're going to talk about the plot details of this movie, such as they are. So the movie begins with Blake Lively at rock bottom, basically, right? She has, in the worst possible scenario, she's addicted. She's basically gone from being like part of a happy family to, and I think she was like a Rhodes Scholar at some point, or
she went to Oxford.
She went to Oxford.
She clearly from a well-off family, a well-appointed family, probably well-appointed home.
Yeah. And then had this huge downward slide to she's a prostitute and addicted to I couldn't tell what drug it was. Heroin, maybe.
I think so. Yeah.
Cocaine. I don't know what the different hard drugs are. I'm sorry. And so she's in the low level. She's like actually okay with how life is going because she's like, I've lost everything.
What is there to live for?
And it's so ridiculous, but at the same time, Lively does a lot to sell it, I think.
She does.
Yeah. There's this moment in the trailer that's pretty awesome when, he says like, what about your life? And she's like, what about it?
What about your life?
What about it?
And it's like, I actually believe her in that moment. I actually thought she did a great job there. But anyway, so she's kind of climbing her way out, and Jude Law, an ex-MI6 agent, is training her up. And it is a big question of why he's training her. Like, why does he make all these sacrifices? And then kind of later they explain it. Like, because, hey, I needed you to help me finish this job that I started and couldn't finish. And I messed up. And now I need you to help me. But it's like, well, why didn't you just do it yourself, Jude Law? That part doesn't make
why
any sense.
He can't go undercover and do it really doesn't make any sense.
Pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I will say that there are the sequences we referenced that are really well done. There's a couple great sequences. One is there's this moment when Blake Lively's character is training, and Jude Law says like is just treating her badly, and he's like, if you can't run the rest of this training track, swim home. And then you see a single continuous shot of Blake Lively walking into the water, and it's like
it looks so cold.
It looks so cold. She's like shivering, and they do it all in one shot.
Yeah.
So like there's no creative editing.
Yeah.
So it's like it seems like she actually did that for real. Like maybe they had like water heaters off the camera, but like
she looks really cold and it feels really cold. And
So that I was just like, I'd never seen that done in like a continuous shot, and I thought that was really well done. And there is one car chase sequence in the middle of this film that's made to look like one long continuous shot. That I thought was genuinely impressive. It's like she's losing control rapidly of the situation as the car chase.
Everything's going wrong. Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I thought I was like watching it. I was riveted. I thought this was a great car chase sequence.
Yeah.
You can probably watch it when it hits YouTube in a few years.
Yeah.
But there's some great sequences in this movie. Other sequences that are really good. There's also a knife fight that she has with Jude Law while he's training her. That's all in one shot again. And I'm just like, this is like impressive filmmaking.
That is really impressive. For both the actors and just kind of the filming of it itself. Yeah. Actually, could we go back to the beginning a little bit? Because I want to talk about the journalist.
Yeah. There's a journalist that discovers her.
Right. And that's just one of those like WTF kind of things of like, why this journalist approaches mirrors her. She thinks he's a client, but he's not. He calls her by her real name. She has him thrown out, but he leaves the cards. So, but it's unclear why this journalist would be approaching one of the survivors of, the people that were in the plane crash. What does he need from her? What does he want from her? She doesn't have any information. So why would this journalist be reaching out to her?
It makes absolutely no sense.
It makes no sense. And then he ends up leaving her in his apartment with all of the things that he's been gathering over years, apparently completely trusting her, even though she's a drug addict and, again, completely at the bottom of life. And then he's killed.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of this throwaway character that feels like, again, a plot device, maybe to get her in touch with Jude Law's MI6 character.
Yeah, no, for sure. I also think that this is a movie that I would say has a pretty simplistic view on terrorism.
Yes,
right?
I wanted to talk about that as well.
Yeah, so except for the fact that Blake Lively's character is not very good at her job, a lot of the plot of this movie, the tone of this movie, does feel like it's straight from the 80s or 90s.
It
in terms
absolutely
of like,
does.
hey, these terrorists, they're like into dangerous things vaguely.
We don't know what they're doing. It's kind of like
doing...
scary Middle Eastern guys.
Scary Middle Eastern guy. And there is a great line where one of the characters says, like, this character's doing it for profit, not the prophet, which I thought was that's clever writing, I have to say.
Right.
But in general, it's a very like simplified view that just like makes these characters very like otherized and makes them feel dangerous.
Absolutely.
And I thought that the presence of the journalist character and like also there's this rich family that finances their quest.
Yes.
Like the presence of those characters basically like not all Middle Eastern people are bad. It's the movie being like, we're not racist. See, there's also good Middle Eastern characters.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's exactly why I felt like that journalist was cast there. And then that other Middle Eastern family who they're Muslim, I think we know, but they're not the radical kind.
Yes.
Right. So it's a big point of this. And yet, of course, the film is still basically reinforcing that racist stereotype.
It's pretty rough on that regard. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then we get to the end of the movie where you're trying to figure out like who's the person behind like the plane crash that killed Blake Lively's character. And as it's happening, I'm rewinding the role because like the entire movie, it's like a mystery of who is this character.
Right.
And as we get to the end, they're like, well, we still don't know who the identity is. And I'm like rewinding through my mind. I'm like, there's only like 6 characters in this movie. Like it's gotta be one of these. And then it's like, why not? It's Sterling K. Brown's character.
Yes.
Of course. For reasons that aren't ever really made super clear.
You don't really know what his motivations are.
How he did all the stuff he did. Like any of that stuff. And it's pretty ludicrous.
Or even it's unclear exactly how he's connected to this bomber character or what the bomber character's motivations are.
What Sterling K. Brown's character's motivations are. Like it's all just
right.
It's all just
And then there's like a love scene too that somehow she's connecting with Sterling K. Brown's character, which I don't really know why.
Because they're both hot. They're both hot. So
and you have to have the obligatory.
If you have 2 people who are hot in the same room, they're obviously gonna have sex with each other.
Yeah, I guess.
So
I mean, one other thing I will say I appreciate about this film, and maybe that's because it's directed by a woman, is it does not feel like it's physically objectifying Blake Lively's character. I mean, there are a couple of scenes which are she has to go. One of her assassination jobs is to go be a sex worker and kill someone. And she does have a very sexy outfit on, but I didn't really feel like the camera was objectifying her. And also just her work as an assassin. She's kind of dressed in a very frumpy way, which doesn't really make sense like for
she's
assassin work.
Like a very like pixie haircut style, right?
And then her sleeves are always way too long, which is completely impractical, but also like, but okay, like she's not being sexually objectified and she's a beautiful woman. And the movie, I think, is more interested in her wants to be more interested in her emotional
journey.
Yeah.
You compare this to movies like Atomic Blonde or again, this movie I just watched recently, Anna, which are both directed by men, and one could argue you very much feel the male gaze in those movies more so than you do in this movie. So it's interesting to kind of just like look at the differences and see like how you'd perceive these characters in different ways. Before we wrap up this review, we should probably talk about the title of the movie.
The title,
because there's been a lot of questions about like, what does it mean, the rhythm section? It doesn't sound like an assassin movie.
No.
So I actually think if this was done in a better way, it could have been like a really cool title, right? But the title essentially refers to like how you should think about your body in order to like calm your body when you're about to kill someone.
Right. The rhythm section is your heart and your breath.
Think about your what is it? The heart is the drums.
Yes.
Your breath is the bass. Or something like your breathing is the bass, right? And it's like basically like think of you must get control of your rhythm section when you're about to kill someone, right?
Yeah.
And that's a kind of cool idea because the whole ostensibly the animating purpose of the movie is like Blake Lively is out of control. She's out for she's hit rock bottom. She's all out of, but the movie doesn't really like back it up in my opinion. And one of the problems is like she doesn't necessarily get better as an assassin throughout the course
exactly.
of the movie,
so the rhythm section is not working really.
Her rhythm section is all discombobulated.
It's really
is the point.
Yeah.
Like it'd be one thing if she like she the first thing she's like really out of control and like shooting all over the place, and then the second thing she's like slightly better and then slightly better. But the whole movie she's just kind of like flailing around.
Exactly.
The whole movie.
And the sound design really does lean into the breathing and the heartbeat. And that again it always is just kind of ragged breathing throughout the whole thing. So again, you hear that she's not getting better as well as seeing that she's not getting better.
Yeah. So she never gets her rhythm section under control.
No.
But the movie does seem to frame it as though she does at the end. She's like at the very last shot of the movie, she's like, this is a total badass. She's like, and it's like, is she though? Yeah.
No.
All right. Well, I think that's going to bring us to the end of this review of the rhythm section. I'm very glad today to be joined by Melissa Tamminga. Melissa, where can people find more of your work?
I write for SeattleScreenScene.com, and you can also find me on Twitter at OneAprilDay, OneAprilDay.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Dave Chensky, that's Dave Chen SKY, or check out my podcast, Culturally Relevant. And if you are enjoying videos like this and movie reviews like this, subscribe to this channel, hit like, and hit the bell icon. You'll get more of these videos as I crank them out. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.